Mjolnir, 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 Mjolnir. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. Today we're going to learn how to paint Thor's hammer and finish up the rest of Thor.
That the entirety of the cosmos is accessible through each and every individual's mind, connecting to the great mind, the great spirit.
Welcome back to the channel, collectors. Today we're going to paint Mjolnir, Thor's hammer in short. Okay, in all of Thor's depictions, yes, the hammer is really important, and so in today's video we're going to learn how to paint the hammer and finish up the rest of Thor, including his boots and the rest of the environmental lighting. So if you have not seen how I painted the flash and the blue OSL kind of thing in the first video, you should check out the link in the description below. Alright, so if you're ready to finish Thor and learn how to paint Mjolnir, let us begin. Alright, ladies and gents, if you are ready to paint, strap in for a really long and intense paint session, and let's get Thor finished. Okay, so now I'm adding in a little bit of orange, red, and a bit of fluorescent blue and dark grey from Vallejo Watercolor. I'm going to be starting to base coat the cloak on Thor. So at this point of time, just make sure that you are doing this evenly and don't have any lumps on the model. So now I'm adding in a little bit of red, mixed in with a little bit of basic flash and a little bit of fluorescent blue to reflect the OSL from Mjolnir. I'm going to be placing the initial highlights. As mentioned, all these images are available on my Patreon. These images really tell you exactly where to place the highlights, so you literally start painting by numbers. Painting by numbers isn't a bad thing because can't really go wrong when you have references right here. Hence the shapes are super duper precise. Okay, so this is how the shapes look like for now. As you can see, the cloak is looking pretty dynamic already. I wouldn't normally highlight this in this shape because just knowledge just doesn't allow me to do so. However, with proper reference and stuff, this allows me to create a lot more complex shapes, which makes this miniature look so much better. Okay, so now adding in a little bit of pale flash and fluorescent blue, I'm creating the initial highlights for the cloak. So remember, just placing it in the shapes of what is required already tells half the picture and wins half the war already. Alright? Because if you don't place the highlights correctly, you don't communicate the shapes correctly, your miniature doesn't look as realistic as it could be. Okay, now adding in a little bit of white. We're creating this lilac color because there's gonna be a lot of blue influence from the hammer light, and we need to make sure that this is accurately reflected in terms of value as well as color. So right here, the extreme highlights are gonna be looking pretty red. Okay, just pushing in the highlights here, instant gratification. So now I'm using dark gray mixed in with a bit of pale blue gray, mixed in with a bit of fluorescent blue. I'm gonna start base coating the color of the hammer. Now the hammer is very angular and there are several values that are required, but I'm just doing the mid-tone first before I'm doing the rest of the hammer. Okay, so with this mid-tone, it's blue and high value. We gotta make sure that the highlight planes, like such as these ones, are very accurately placed. So these ones have a bit more white in them. Okay, so this is the point where the hammer is touching the lightning. It's an imaginary lightning, so you just gotta imagine that there's a lightning bolt striking the hammer at that corner, doing some edge highlights, and then the bottom right plane is the plane where most light is reflected. Okay, so that's why I'm placing a little bit more highlight there. Right now I'm just sketching and I have not done any blending at all. Okay, so now we're going to be painting the hilt and the handle of the hammer. So right here you have already seen me done up the hammer, and with just a bit of refinement and a bit of freehand, I've painted the inscriptions on Mjolnir. Created a little bloom out there too with some pure white. So the bloom actually just emanates from the point of contact with the lightning bolt. So this is the same kind of silver material that we have painted on the hammer, and I'm just placing on some of the similar colors. Okay, so now with a little bit of orange and a bit of dark grey, I'm going to be painting a bit of the reflected light right here. So Thor has a gold belt buckle right here, and we're gonna reflect it pretty accurately. So what I'm doing now is I'm painting in a little bit of orange tones, and I'm gonna add in a bit of yellow tones with some extreme highlights subsequently. Okay, so as I mentioned before, gold tends to be more orange towards the shadows and more yellow towards the midtones, hence adding this yellow tone right here. The color used for this was Japanese uniform. So now adding in a little bit of white and a little bit of fluorescent blue, placing in the very extreme highlights. So the belt has been painted in a similar color with the orbs, non-metallic metal silver. Now I'm just using a bit of dark grey to fill out some of the areas that I missed out on the armor previously, the chest armor. And now I'm just going to be very roughly placing in the highlights using this same greyish color onto the legs. And just picking out some areas which had highlights on the reference pictures. Just adding in a little bit of blue-grey pale there. So now we're going to be painting in some of the areas of influence where Mjolnir's light touches the base. So that was done with blue-grey pale, a bit of dark grey, a bit of fluorescent blue, and a bit of orange. So it's just this amalgamation of all the colors that we've used, and I'm painting in the shadows and the lights based on what I have on the reference pictures. Alright, so right now I'm placing in where the lightning is striking the ground. So just adding in a little bit of white and pale flash, gradually moving up the highlights. I am creating a point of highlight on the ground. This color is also used for the edge highlighting on the broken rocks. So black orange is used to create the shadows. So these are the cast shadows that are formed from Mjolnir casting his light upon Thor, and hence some cast shadows towards the back and the middle. So now we're going to paint the inside of Thor's cloak, just red, orange and a little bit of black. And I'm going to be placing in the initial highlights. Okay. So just make sure that this layer is white first, because the reflected light tends to be very diffused. Alright, so now adding in a little bit more red into this mix, I'm going to be placing the initial highlights. Just based on the reference pictures, I'm placing in the areas where the cloak will catch the reflected light from the ground. Right here, as seen. Okay. So adding in a little bit of orange brown right here from value model color. I'm going to try to attempt to push the reflected light's color temperature to be slightly warmer. Right here. So now this is the toughest part. We're going to be refining this cloak, and I'm going to be refining the shapes. I feel that the cloak didn't speak too well about the lighting and changes need to be made. So first and foremost, I'm creating a low value shadow to push the form of the cape once more. And now with this red mid-tone, I'm going to be course correcting and making sure that the shapes are as accurate as possible. Funny thing about course correcting, I ended up covering everything that I did previously and I redid everything. Okay, so now I'm just going to make the value jump not as wide. I'm going to be creating some of the mid-tones right here with a slightly desaturated red. Adding in a little bit of blue-grey pale and a bit of fluorescent blue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be placing the highlights a little bit more accurately and more discerningly than I did before. So this is a very good lesson for everybody. I think once you are a bit more discerning with the highlights, the shapes will reflect a lot better. So now towards the end, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be blending all the stuff together, and soon you will see this is the final result. So I hope you found this two-part series on Thor very useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll catch you in just a little bit. So that's a wrap. That's how we paint Thor from Marvel Crisis Protocol. So if you are still watching all the way till now, you must have found this video useful or somewhat entertaining. I would appreciate it if you give me a like and subscribe if you thought I deserve it, because this really helps the channel and tells Google that this video is useful and more people get to see it. Okay? So, at this point of time, I'd like to take the time to thank my patrons for allowing me to do this. It's because of their help, I'm able to paint and record these videos so that we all get to become better miniature painters together. This exclusive video for this series would be the unadulterated, very long video of how I painted Thor. So you should check that out. You don't want to miss that. So I hope to catch you in the next video. See you.